Let's talk about what makes someone not a good learner. Like what are the habits or things that straight away go, that's not good learning skills, or what makes that?
So there are learning skills and then there are attributes, and I sometimes call those learning enablers. For example, you could have someone that's amazing at being able to process information, they've got a great memory. However, if they are terribly procrastinating, then they're not enabled to use those processes. And so if we divide them in these two different areas, a lot of people will think about the learning skills, and they're definitely important, for sure. However, what I found is that the learning skills are often less relevant and less important than the learning enablers. These are the things like the mindsets and the perspectives, the time management, the task management, the prioritization, the growth mindset. Because without those, someone that doesn't have good learning skills would never be able to develop better learning skills. This is a problem I have a lot with the current mainstream approach to it, is that we're often very status quo. We sort of say, okay, well, we've got all these learners that don't have some of these skills. Okay, so what are we doing for them? But the conclusion is people with better skills perform better. And then there's not as much focus in terms of, well, how do we need to develop these skills in the students? Often it's, well, how can teachers help to facilitate these skills in the students? But teachers are already overworked, so it becomes a sort of, catch-22 where these learners don't have skills and they're not performing and no one is there to really teach them. Teachers are then expected to teach it to them, but they're already overworked. And then we've got these learners that have some of these skills that are doing well. So the actual skills, I think, are less important than some of the attributes. For example, just like what I mentioned, growth mindset is a really, really big one. It's not an easy thing to develop deep, transformative learning skills. It's not one of those things that you can do overnight. There are going to be mistakes. There is going to be significant trial and error, and there has to be a really reflective process. And if the mindset is, I'm going to give this a go for 20 minutes, and if it doesn't produce results, that's it, the learner is not going to be able to persist through to create the transformative change that they need. So one of the biggest focuses that I have in my practice is actually teaching that mindset to even give them the chance to develop those skills in the first place.
It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, that growth mindset. Yeah. It's one of these, it was a bit like, what's your why, when Simon Sinek brought it out, everyone, you started using it, and then now I've started, hearing growth mindset. Can we go a little bit deeper into that? So what does that mean? How do you teach it? And sort of your views on growth mindset?
I've been involved in sort of the learning development space. I see sort of how corporate tends to use the word, and I really think that the way that's being used now is being bastardized a little bit from the original research, which was by Carol Dweck. And it's become this sort of buzzword that sort of means more of this nebulous concept. But I think it's important to understand that growth mindset versus fixed mindset, these are, in a way, almost personality attributes that have been developed since usually a young age. And one of the characteristic differences is the response that someone has to making mistakes and to difficulty. So someone with a fixed mindset is seeking validation because they are obsessed about an outcome. Their primary focus is to have a positive outcome. Whereas someone with a growth mindset, the outcome is a side effect of the process, and they're focused on the process. Making mistakes is something that they are thriving in. They're actually looking for those mistakes because they see them as growth opportunities. Whereas with a fixed mindset, the mistake actually starts to create insecurity. It challenges their sense of identity, and in some cases, their sense of self-worth. So those with a growth mindset, because they aren't having like an existential crisis every single time they make a mistake, they're able to throw themselves in the deep end and learn a lot more effectively. There's a big issue in the corporate space, I think, when people say growth mindset, have more of it, without recognizing what are the constituents behind it. And that can actually make things worse, because now you have all these people that know what growth mindset is, recognize they don't have it, but they're not given the skills to realistically develop them. So now they feel even worse, because now they know that there's this big disparity between what they should be and then where they are, and there seems to be no way to bridge that gap. And I think that's probably doing more harm than good.
And if someone has a fixed mindset, you said it obviously starts, some of these things you learn at an early age.
Yeah.
Is it too late for someone at an older age, in their 20s or 30s, to switch? And what do leaders need to sort of, a couple little tips to leaders that can actually encourage that going from a fixed to a growth?
So there's not a wealth of research on this. So I'm going to draw a lot from my personal practice, working with the people that I work with. In my practice, there is resistance, but it takes time. It's possible, but it's not going to happen overnight, obviously. But in some cases, it can take months, sometimes even years, to create that change. I think what leaders can do is to be aware of when they are asking questions or demanding things of people that place the importance or the value of them in their role, or even as a person sometimes, based on the outcome that's being produced. And this can go really, really deep. For example, let's say that you have a new graduate that you've just employed, a new member of your team, and you assign them a certain task. Most of the time, the success of that task is based on the outcome of that task. There isn't too much thought given in terms of what is the process that they're doing. And if there is, it's usually retrospective based on the task. So if they failed the task, then we look at the process and see, well, where did we go wrong? And if they succeeded on the task, well, we don't need to care about the process because the task was completed successfully.
Sounds like our office.
As a vast, overwhelming majority. So a better way to do it would be when we are setting a task, the first step of the task should be to map out what the process is. And then to say, okay, you're new to this. We don't expect you to be perfect. But no even moderately decent leader expects someone new to be perfect at their job straight away. But it's about what we're doing with that expectation. So we don't expect you to be perfect. And there are 10,000 ways you could do this wrong. But you'll probably only make 4 or 5 mistakes. So in the first stage, what we're gonna do is I want you to map out the process, and we're gonna figure out what are the mistakes that you're most likely to make. And every time we discover a possible mistake or a weakness, we celebrate. That's a win. Oh, great job. You picked up on that. I'm really impressed that you were able to pick up on that. Most people don't pick up on that on the first time. And once we're happy with the process, then we can say, okay, well, just go and do it, and we'll see how it goes. And then afterwards, if the outcome was successful, we would still do the reflection and would say, after your experience, did you feel that there are any other mistakes that you were going to make that you could reflect on? Did you get lucky in having a good outcome? Or if there was a bad outcome, then we could reflect on that, obviously differently by saying, well, how did things go wrong? But making sure that the focus is on saying, oh, so these were the mistakes. So we still won. Oh, that's good. We figured out where the mistakes were. Oh, that was a really good thing. Oh, by the way, just these areas, can you just correct that and just come back to me later?
Yeah, that's a really, it's encouraging mistakes, right? Isn't it? It's about saying,
it's not even,
we want you to make mistakes. Maybe it's not even encouraging.
It's like, more than that. It's more. The whole structure, the whole framing of the work environment, the idea of performance is that the primary outcome of peak performance is the ability to engage in and thrive in and work with your mistakes at a very fast frequency, rather than the outcome. It's the understanding that we all have as professionals that the outcome is a symptom of the process. If we all know that, but there's a sense of insecurity, especially from a business's point of view, to say, okay, so therefore we're actually going to use that as the primary metric for success, because you need the outcomes at the end of the day. So you need to have, in a way, that belief that yes, if we just triple down on process, mistake finding behavior, the outcome will become better over time. And it creates a really great culture as well.